Recording in progress.
Please.
All right. This is a special meeting with a budget workshop of the Financial Planning Allocation Commission on March 23rd, Wednesday, starting at 7:02. The rules of conduct for a hybrid virtual meeting, the web-based call for this meeting is operating under the following procedure. The session will be both video and audio recorded. Commissioners and staff will generally remain on mute except when speaking and voting, and will generally be keeping the video on themselves throughout the meeting. If a member of the public creates an audio or video disruption, they may be manually ejected from the meeting upon recommendation of staff or the chair. For public input before the meeting, please email your comments to publicinput@columbiact.org within 24 hours before the meeting.
Okay, thank you. We'll come to order. Pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, minutes of our last meeting, this February 16th, obviously there's a much something. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as printed on March.
I'll second.
A motion and a second, any discussion? All those in favor?
I didn't mention.
Yeah, you're good. Kevin wasn't, yes. I guess we'll launch right into our budget workshop. Before we get into specifics, let's look at page 31 for a second. For the budget document. Just an overview, these are the major funds that we have. And there was some discussion last week about whether or not we were on a cash basis. Basically, we are in the general fund. The big fund has a general fund, first column of this exhibit. Part of our confusion was around what happens, how capital is paid for. It is not necessarily paid for as we acquire an item, we pre-fund, and that's what this exhibit will show you, that there is a capital fund into which we make deposits or transfers from the general fund. So this is how we are pre-funding some things, and if there's something we need on a short-term basis, if it's a capital item, the money would be transferred into the capital fund, and the item would be purchased or funded out of the capital reserve fund. So that fund is, I can't even think of the right way to describe it, but it's, as we expend money, it comes out of that fund for capital accounts, but that account also has pre-funding for things we're going to do in the future. And the way a fund like that is set up is, you'll see that we have a beginning balance. Money is transferred in mostly from the general fund. If you look at the capital reserve fund, it also gets a transfer in from the county roads fund. And you'll see there is some actual spending out of that fund. And at the bottom, you'll see that there are funds reserved for future activity. So that reflects that we are funding current year activity. If we're buying a fire truck this year, the dollars for that purchase will be coming out of there. Page 31, the last one in the budget document. Yeah,
Actually, that's the standalone one.
Well, there's.
well,
It was in the.
those reprinted, I'm not doing numbers anyway.
The packet.
Yeah, there was a replacement page, but since I'm not drawing the numbers, I just still have to do the even version. I mean, with the speed. Number on the bottom right. Okay, like I was saying, there are several funds and all the income, the grants that we get, the fees we charge to the public, all that money goes into the general fund. Grants from the state government goes into the general fund. And we run the town out of that fund, paying current year expenses. Any questions or? And there was a question I think somebody had on the service fund, this also on this page, and you can see that money is, as was recommended, money is being transferred in there. You've seen that $25,000 number. So this shows an interaction between the various funds. Everybody got it? Don't care? That's okay.
So is this what other towns do then? And it seems like it would have to be a standard practice. Yeah.
Mark can speak better. I'm pretty sure that
Basically, they call it fund account, which is what's different about municipality. Standard on how municipalities run.
Yeah.
That is that what you found for GFOA?
Well, you'd have to transfer
Yeah.
that contingency into a fund reserve at the end of the year. So
No.
that you don't show it as a,
No,
otherwise it'll be a budget
no,
variation.
you're jumping.
Contingency is different.
I'm glad I did
know, it
this.
sounds like it.
No, it's fine.
But it's not. Contingency is a part of the general.
You mean
fund.
contingency? It just means if you don't spend what you budgeted, it stays in the general fund.
Okay.
It's that simple.
Right, so it's not lapsing. Just-
No,
Correct. It's not.
where was I?
And the operating budgets, if not spent, roll into the general.
Yeah, if you overspend or underspend what you budget for, you don't overspend, but yeah, you can do transfers or authorize additional spending. That just means your projected year-end balance will be higher or lower if your expenditure is different from what you budgeted. That happens in the general fund. And the capital fund, if something comes up with additional money, there has to be a town meeting to vote to approve an additional transfer into the capital reserve fund. Are we with it? Moving on?
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a quick look at please start with me. Okay, here's one of these. We said we got it.
Yeah.
This just shows a little bit of what we were talking about the other day, that we try to figure out what the projects are, what future projects are, and how much we want to set aside this year. And about the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th over, you'll see 2022 to 2023 budget appropriation. That's how much we're going to transfer into the capital account and the general fund this year. That's what has been proposed. And the total of that is what, 987,000.
Correct.
And this exhibit also shows you a little bit of history. It shows where does it start? 2021 balance. It shows what we appropriated in 2021 to 2022, which would, of course, increase the amount in the fund. It shows that there was a vote to transfer in additional money of $75,000. And it shows what we spent in 2021 through 2022. And it shows what we intend to spend for the remainder of the year. Remember, this document was prepared before the year was over. And then it shows what we think we're gonna have at the end of this year. That's the projected balance at the end of 2022. And then, of course, if we do the 2022-2023 budget appropriation, that fund will increase to projected balance 7122, and then we show what projects we intend to complete in the budget year. So this tracks what we're doing, what goes in, what comes out. Again, there's some pre-funding, and then it shows a plan for the next 5 years, next 4 years, this 5-year plan. And flipping over to page 28. I think that was a simple question about investment income, whether or not the capital reserve fund earns investment income. This is a development of a cash look at the capital reserve account. You have a beginning balance, some things happen. We start by looking at, we have a list of projects that we pre-funded. We know the sum of what should be in the account by looking at those projects. This is what I put aside for a fire truck. This is what I put aside for a bridge. The sum of those two things is what should be in the account. So we look at when we have an audited report, we put the exact balance in, and then we figure out whether we're in balance. If not, we take that into account and transfer a little more, or if there's free money, we say we can use that free money and assign it to one of the things we're funding. And then we go through this calculation, we're gonna use some TAR money. If we project investment income, we're gonna get a little investment income. But this page calculates the total dollar amount that we're gonna have to transfer into this fund this year. Get it?
Got it.
And the other thing I won't talk about, page 4. With interest. At the very bottom of the page, this little bracketed thing, that just shows you the interaction between the various funds. You're taking money out of the general fund to go to a couple of places, to go to capital reserve, some to go to the dog fund, some to go to the, what's that fund? We set aside for retirements and all that stuff. And it's service fund, yeah, internal service fund. And it just shows that I think the rec fund is the only one that sends money back to the general fund. Again, that just shows you the interaction between funds, and it's consistent with what you see on page 31. Okay, any questions at all about the content, just from overview of the document? We good? Okay. Now, we start our budget discussion. We said we will start with the Board of Ed. Were there any questions submitted, or do we have any? Where are we?
I have not received it.
No. Did you pass out that thing, Bev?
Projection, yes.
Okay. I guess I looked at it, I tried to do an overview in my head when I'm looking at a budget. I don't really like to go budget to budget to budget, because you never true things up. I've been in situations where people's budget is just, we'll take last year's budget and increase it by 5%. Which makes that doesn't work. If you come in way under budget, or way over budget, that's just a new guideline or guidepost. And I gotta say, I had a lot of trouble, probably mainly because of COVID. For the past 2 years, I had trouble figuring out what was normal. I still don't know. And that's what I've been wrestling with. So I try to look at the last complete year and get from there to what's being budgeted for next year. And I have to confess, I need to work a lot more. That's one of the reasons I asked if we could take a look at the Board of Ed Expenditure Report, which I think everybody has except me. I lost mine. But you could talk a little bit about where we are this year. Maybe that will help fill in a big gap in terms of my understanding of what the numbers are telling us. And by that, I mean, what we focus on is how close to this year's budget do you project your spending to be this year? And I know that might be an unfair question since you held the superintendent for long, but
Well, I can tell you that what you see in the available funds will be going down.
Yes. Would you like me to take over?
are there any firm numbers in there? I knew everything.
So pretty much, the budget is still in flux right now. Florida Vet did receive additional American Relief funds this year that were not anticipated. I mean, right now, we've taken in at least over about $55,000 alone just for special ed services. Cover that. There was anticipated ESSER funds and that we did budget for. There's also available American Relief funds, but I think we're saving that for next year. We've also had numerous turnovers, paid leave, unpaid leaves this year that I'm still trying to catch up on so I can put a firmer number down. I'm hoping by next week I can get that firmed up better. So a lot of it is personnel. There has been quite a bit of changes. There has been some unanticipated repairs in the school this year, which we're working on getting fixed. And that includes a sewage pump, some asbestos abatement, and water heaters currently. And there are potentially a few more that are unanticipated that we're going to use this budget instead of going to the non-lapsing account because they have the funds available. Right now, and even if I catch up on some of this, there is also another couple of, there are a retirement incentive out, and right now there's a few people going to take advantage of that, which is going to be part of this budget.
What does that offer?
So it's $7,500 a person. They have till March 31st to commit. If they wait till April 1st, they will not be getting it.
How many people are,
So currently we have, there's a potential of 4 right now, which is $30,000. So that could go up or that could go down actually, based on what I heard today. So, and again, there's been like, there is, I think it's in this projection, I believe it is. With some of the changes in personnel, there's been changes of program. There's a STEM program that is starting up this year. So they had to buy a lot of equipment and classroom supplies for that. So that's coming in. I don't think that's in this number yet. So, and the new technology teacher needed some things to upgrade the facility for. So that's going to be coming. So I'm hoping by next week I'll have a little more of an idea. There is another major project coming, but we won't know maybe for another couple of weeks if that's going to be done.
What is it?
Another repair. So
what is it?
it's the boiler. There's some major issues with that, so they're trying to figure out. I don't want to say what the cost is. There's a potential. I'm hoping that's the high end, but until we get a quote, we prefer not to mention that, but it's a major repair.
I can add that the proposed budget that is projected for next year represents real time, real people, real programs.
Yes.
So it's what we know as our needs right now for special education, for regular education, for recovery from COVID. That's what it represents.
And yes, and this year we did have some changes in special ed. There was a couple of kids that ended up leaving the program that we thought they were going to be in this year. So that's more savings that was not. So
On average, what's the high school tuition rate?
the high school tuition rate went up about 3%.
For EO Smith or Bolton.
Yes.
They're both about 13, they're over $13,000. I know that. Over 13,000.
Steve has a question.
EO Smith is a little higher than both.
No, he didn't even say
By
that.
like a couple $100.
And it doesn't include special education costs.
No, that excludes.
I understand that.
And our buses, contracted bus for the regular ed students went up 4%. I think the budget was like 5, but I made that change before. I came by that.
You probably told me before, but why did they drop in regular transportation? There was one, was
I think we.
There was a little drop because I think there was.
We took away one bus.
There was a thought of that, plus there was also, I think there was some money put aside for additional, like a parent transportation and stuff that out. Wasn't happening.
In this year's budget, is there enough to pay for the boiler if it's worst case?
Potentially right now, yes, until I update the projection, I'm thinking we should be able to cover it.
Okay.
I have to get all the other factors in.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
certainly.
On the bottom here, it says Board of Ed available funds. As this paper is laid out right here, you're telling me that 611,000 is what we'll have after everything's paid this year?
No, that's it. If we were closing as of March 4th.
Yeah.
That's the number. That's without taking into account some of all these changes that I have to put out.
Yeah, so
So there's been changes over the years in personnel and other things which were not updated. So I have to take care of that.
but I also know that if 4 people retire, they go from probably a higher step than other people that maybe have a lower step. So there will maybe some change in salary and stuff. I get.
Yeah.
As the first selectman, and not for FiPAC, this is for me. If you, because I'd like to see it so I can comment on it for FiPAC if they. I'd like
Don't
to
forget,
see.
you're a member.
But Mr. Chairman, I do respect your position, so the bottom line is, I'd like to see when you get it, worst case scenario. And my question is, so if you project, say the boiler's $100,000
Mhm.
and all the other stuff adds up to X amount of dollars. My question is, if you don't spend that, or if it's less at the end of next year, we either go back to the general, or can it go into that special fund
The
that you had,
non-lapsing account.
the non-lapsing account?
So if there's funds available at the end of the year, the Board of Ed has, they can put in a request to FiPAC to put some more funding into the non-lapsing account,
Up to 2%.
up to 2% of their budget.
Great.
Is it? Oh, that's right, it changed to 3.
Trace again, keep up.
So right now, there's $300,000 sitting in that fund. Not last year, there was nothing requested the year before, FiPAC felt that was sufficient. So it's a discussion that would have to be between the Board of Ed, whether they want to make that request or return all the funds. If they make the request, then it would be down to FiPAC approving or not approving it, so.
And also to answer your question about the retirement incentive, that is to all the unions, not just teachers union, but the non-certified union.
So they may not be.
Right.
So as I read this though, anticipated additional expenditures, is that our guess from the point of now until the end of the year?
That's what I'm anticipating on those lines for the rest of the year,
To complete.
to complete the year. So with that,
But one of the big items that are missing from that column then to finish these questions, I assume was going to ask that.
it does not include the retirements or some of the changes in the personnel.
So am I correct or incorrect in saying the 611 you have there minus the 285 could, at this point on the numbers on, or the stuff on this page, at that point, would that give us a size of Texas guess of what would be left over in your Board of Education lines at the end of this fiscal or school year?
So right now, by next week, I should be able to give a more formal number. It's not going to be exact because we're still got a couple months left in the school year, so.
But that's how I would get a large snapshot of what we're kind of
Potentially, yeah,
potential.
but it does keep changing
Understand that.
throughout the rest of the
What
year.
I'm saying is, in my opinion, look at the repairs you need, look at everything you need. and know that your money at the end of this year should pay for these things.
Yes.
In my opinion, I'm just saying, I'm not FiPAC, because our general fund is healthy, and I hate to have to go into it in September and say we need a boiler or something.
Just for
That's what I'm saying.
clarification for what Stephen just said, this 611, that already takes into account the 285.
Yes,
So it's not 611 minus the 285.
no, yes,
611 is what would be left if everything,
yeah. Like I
Doesn't
said, I
change.
still have to reconcile a lot.
I'll wait a month.
Wait a minute, what's the 285?
Nothing, it's money that's still budgeted to be spent on.
this still has to complete the year.
Anticipated.
Okay. Thank you. I know I should
Yeah.
not ask questions on this stuff because it changes like my socks.
It's already different.
It's terrible. I'm sorry.
So what's the
I
month?
hate this. It's the best of times, it's the worst of times. Please continue. Sure.
So you read a book.
Or at least the first bit.
So, yeah.
Anybody else on the board then? I'm trying to form a picture and think if you appreciate where I'm coming from and where I'm trying to get to. Have no conclusions and I have nothing to suggest. I need to kick it around a little bit more.
I do want everybody to remember that probably after next fiscal year, some of the grant funding that the Board of Ed will be getting next year is ending. So
Federal or
federal. Yep. So like the ESSER funds, the American Relief funds, it's basically next year and I think then we're done.
When is ECS stuff going down?
Let's see, next year is supposed to go flat.
Yeah, next year's
So,
flat.
and then possibly after the year after that, the ECS could be, but the Board of Ed doesn't get the, basically that's what's funneled to the Board of Ed, but yeah, so they're gonna start revamping, I think, after next year, what we're gonna get, which we're probably gonna get a decrease. Plus, I think there's a change in excess cost reimbursements. I don't remember if that's going, I think it's going down. Yeah, it's going down, so.
There's a lot of people yelling about it, so we'll see.
Given the state surpluses now, do you think they'll maybe roll that forward a little because it's not popular?
I think it depends on how we get the legislation to side. So, I think Cave and if you have any groups and CCM and all that, I think they're gonna have to join forces to keep the funding going, but.
okay, one random thing for the two new guys. By law, once we appropriate approve a budget for the Board of Ed, we have complete control of that money. So if you were looking at this and you said, hey, we made a mistake last year, give some of that back, you do not have the right to do that. Once they get it, they have complete control.
What you can say.
That's why we have you here, to be the heavy hitter. Okay, anything else? I haven't looked at your capital budget. There's so much stuff there. We will talk about it, but I had a little surprise this week that cost me a day. Anyway, there's nothing major in here for this year. So, enough
We're not
discussion.
changing it, so for next year. we're not changing it. It was higher. Right. Good part.
Well, I did have one question. This is probably more for Mark than for you. But the paving, I noticed in the town side, paving cost estimates are way up over what they used to be. Is that real or is that new style of the new head of capital?
Well, the cost of paving is gone up because the cost of petroleum is gone up, so they're linked. So the cost of asphalt is a lot more than it was last year.
Plans are just checked.
Right? We don't know where they're going to come in yet.
On the replacement of the rugs. And were you replacing floor tiles? At the school, yes.
Yes, well, we have a, we do asbestos abatement, so that's gonna occur as soon as kids get out. For them. And then we're
The asbestos abatement on the floor tiles? Okay, we can't just go cover those?
in fact, they've looked into it, they've already been covered once, I think they're all tracking and doing.
The title's not in good shape.
They're coming up.
Is that what it is? Okay, Kelly, you there? You always is within this budget. Any comments, question? Board guys?
Well, but can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
I only had one question about the incentives for retirement, the 7,500 per person. Are we trying to encourage people to retire because we're overstaffed? I thought we had some problems with understaffing.
We're not overstaffed by any means. We're offering it as a way to, we were overstaffed on one, and it's already reflected, and we didn't replace that person, they've left. And now we're exactly where we should be for staffing. But I think as Steve said, sometimes when we replace people, if they're at, say, a higher step, they can come in at a lower step. So that was some of the reason for our
Well, it's
retirement.
incentive because we have a lot of, just like the town and all over, but there's, like I said, an aging population. So we just, the idea was to see if somebody are ready to retire, to see if they would do it. We're not trying to make anybody leave. I think it was just to give it a little incentive in case somebody was contemplating it and just saying, here you go. And then, of course, we would replace with a lower step just to save money. But if there was no push to make anybody leave, it was just something they thought would be nice to offer to the staff.
Some of the positions, the focus has changed over the years. So for instance, if you were hired as a paraprofessional, say in the 90s or early 2000s, the responsibilities, what was required then with what is required now has really changed. You know, more toward a more behavioral interventionist versus like a teacher's aide in the old days as well. That would be some of the shifting. So-called paraprofessional.
Okay, I just wasn't sure when it seemed like we were having concerns about people leaving with all the leaves and the unpaid leaves and hiring has been difficult, I assume, for the school as much as for everybody else in the rest of America. So I didn't know why we were incentivizing people to leave, but I get it if there are other issues associated with it.
We haven't had, all of our folks who have resigned or left, we haven't had difficulty filling their positions as of yet.
That's true. Their recruitment has been worked really well this year, so there's no concerns about replacement. So.
Good, okay.
Okay, I don't think we're gonna make any decisions tonight. And again, I might have some questions, but I need to stare at this thing before I come up with them. We are not gonna revisit one bit numbers tonight, so if you'd like to take your leave, will be nice. I'd say thank you for coming. And
All right, well, thank you. And
you're welcome to stay, of course, but.
thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night, bud.
Good night, Bob.
Okay, we can talk about her now. Is there any chance you can print that little thing I did with the impact of whatever?
Oh, the,
Yeah.
assessor.
Or put it up on the screen, or I don't know if you can do that.
I can send it to Mark, we can show it on the screen and I can.
So why don't we do that? I'll just make a random comment while we're waiting. We keep saying we're in good shape because we have a good fund balance, and we do. We have a healthy fund balance.
Am I reading it correctly, 20 point something?
I would never do that calculation, you know that by now. It's up there, yeah. It's up there.
It's printed somewhere.
Yeah.
I saw it printed, yeah.
But the point I wanted to make was, annually, we've been operating at a deficit for the past several years. And I think that deficit's gonna get bigger this year and bigger the following year. I based that on going back to page 27, the capital account. If you look at the transfers that we are starting in column 7 and the last 4 or 5 columns, what we expect to have to transfer from the general fund into the capital reserve account is whatever, 987,000 this year. That jumps to $1,000,004. Got it?
Correct.
Jumps to it, $1,000,004 the year after that, $1,000,003 the year after that, million, almost 3 again. So with that size number, we will be operating, if we continue the way we're doing, committed to keeping a flat mill rate, that high 20 will be gone pretty quickly. Now, this year will not be a good year to have any kind of substantial tax increase, probably no tax increase at all. But I'm just pointing out that we not only need to look at this budget year, but we need to be aware of what's going to happen in the future. And the fact that we are operating on a deficit and drawing down the general fund, we need to think about that. Maybe not tonight, maybe not as part of this budget, but we have to plan for that and come up with a long range position. Whether or not we need a tax increase, we will. These numbers are good, and I blame Stephen for that. And I thank Stephen for that, because he finally said to some people, give me a realistic plan. I don't want the numbers jump bouncing around from year to year. And so I think it's good that we have something that we think is fun that we can plan against. I'm not preaching. What would you like to talk about next? Either the
This is fine on the desktop.
either the capital reserve fund budget or the board of selectmen budget. Anything in there that raise questions or anybody? The thing you just got was my rough attempt to address, I think Kelly had a question. Can we figure out what the mill rate would have been, or the equivalent mill rate, what was the impact of revaluation? So this is a rough stab at looking at it. And basically what this tries to do is go backwards and try to take the numbers we were working with last year and increase last year's real estate values by the amount that they were increased as a result of revaluation, and see what that number would be. I'm waiting for Jeff to nod his head, so take a minute to do that. Got it?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
So this is what,
So anyway, the bottom line is that right now the mill rate is
Oh, that's it.
29.3. And if we keep a 0 mill rate increase, then would that mean that next year it will be 27.09.
No,
Okay, then explain it further to me.
325.87.
Correct.
Oh, 25.87.
To keep the tax the same round, we would have to drop.
So the tax will be the same.
So you'd have to use 2 rows out of the undesignated balance fund to buy it down to get it to the.
What's the two?
So because of the revaluation,
Let's go one at a time. Take-
because of the revaluation,
Yeah.
and I thought mill rate component. So that means,
No. Oh, this is quotes from last year's budget.
that's good, but which is
Those are the numbers from last year's budget. 29.33.
29.3. So to keep it even.
No, don't jump that far ahead. What this column is if 2 seconds after we set the mill rate last year, 2 seconds after that, if they complete the reval, is they use these numbers instead. I'm saying that we want to revise last year's mill rate to 25.87. That's what the impact of the increase in real estate values would have done. So these are equivalent numbers.
Oh, okay.
And the first column is what's in the budget currently. This is what's in the.
Based on what is in the budget currently, then next year's rate to finance our budget will be 27.09.
Currently, unless we use some money from the general fund to draw that number down like we do every year.
Yes.
And the question is, do you draw enough from it to use, reserve enough from the general fund to take it from 2709 down to 2587, which should be zero.
So,
Question or?
Yeah, probably dumb question, but my question is that if we, assuming we buy our way to a lower cost tax to keep the tax base flat
A rate tax
for
rate.
next year, how much of a shock do we anticipate if we don't do that the following year? Now, admittedly, I'm assuming, I don't know how long inflation is gonna hit us.
Can't answer that question. Again, it goes back to what I don't have the revised fund, but the general fund is what now for,
4.3.
I mean, you can't keep buying,
that's what
you
I'm saying.
can't keep buying, the flat rate, but like, and I understand you're saying that we might want to do it, we might want to do it this year. But my question is that, is it gonna be like a real kick in the face the following year? Like,
Oh, not necessarily.
Like, I mean, shockingly kick in the face.
Oh, you don't have to do it all at once. I mean, like, this might require using, let's say, 700,000 for the general fund. Maybe next year, you still operate at a deficit, but operate at a slightly lower deficit. So maybe next year, you take $500,000 out of the funds or manage to.
And then you let it, you gradually
Wean yourself off.
wean yourself off. Got it.
And I have no suggestion, but I'm just saying, think about it.
So,
I
just
know.
so that I understand, the 15,448, that's the number that balances the budget. And you backed into what that mill rate would be if we're balancing it for the next year.
No, say that again.
The 15,448,
Yeah.
that number is a calculated number to balance
Oh,
the
this
budget.
This is, no, that's directly from the budget. This is directly from page 31 that you have. It just says, based on the revenues we're gonna collect in terms of grants, in terms of what we charge the public for services,
Yes.
add all that up. Then if we approve all these expenditures that people are asking for.
Yes,
You spend that much.
right.
In order to break even, you have to tax the public 15 million.
Yeah, okay, that would balance the budget.
Oh, okay, that's what you said.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah. So that's the number, which that would come out to about a 7.3% tax increase rate for the individual.
well, that's a tax bill. These decisions don't have to be made now, obviously.
I'm just trying to put my head around
I
this.
know.
What,
But usually what happens is that we go over all the expenditures that happen to go like all of that and what's left. And then at the end of the budget process, we look at the expenditures and approve those expenditures. But we have to decide how much to take from the fund balance. And usually we take, what we've been doing for the past 6 or 7 years, I think, we've taken enough from the fund balance to have a zero tax bill increase. Now, because of revaluation, that gets a little bit more complicated this time around. But I think that's what we're gonna have to do, is once we understand what the amount of money that we have to budget for the board of selectmen and Board of Education. And I know that you two guys are new to this, but then we have to decide how much money to take from the fund balance and whether or not we want to increase the tax rate. And it's probably, it sounds to me right now that in this case, we're gonna have to, even though the mill rate's gonna be lower, we're gonna have to increase a little bit, but we'll see, we'll make that decision when the time is necessary to do that. And that'll be 3-4 weeks from now, I think. Does that make sense, Tony?
No.
Okay, then you explain it.
I get
I
it.
don't know anything.
Nothing has been decided as of yet.
No.
But this number basically was contrived. It says the 15,448 is if we were gonna balance it and not take money from the general fund.
Yeah.
That would be the amount of money that we would have to generate in tax revenue.
Yeah.
But no decisions to make, Rich, I understand.
You know, I wish I didn't have to wear a mask because I'm smiling through this whole thing, but I do have to wear a mask right now. I won't once I have my surgery.
Please do, wear a mask. We don't want to be responsible here either.
So anyway, it's a process that we all go through, and what I like about this board, by the way, is how well we work together and come to a good decision that's best for the people. And we've done that consistently now for years and years, all the time I've been on this board.
Kelly, you there? I think you had a question on, can we do this?
I don't
I think
understand.
that's already-
Can we do what?
Calculate the impact of revaluation on the mill rate.
Well, this was my primary question was, can we reduce the mill rate substantially? Which looks like we're gonna have to do, 25, to get us down to a flat, so we're no tax increase. We think we can do it. We just have to have the will to do it.
Can anybody?
Yeah, she wants to know if we can reduce the mill rate substantially to make a flat tax, rate, no increase. Is what I got.
No increase.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead. That's the right answer.
2587.
Yeah, it's, we have to decrease the mill rate to 25.87.
Right. So we can get there. It's just a question of what's the consequence of doing so. So we can figure that out as we go through the process.
Just subtract 25.87 from 27.09.
I'm sorry, Ernie, I couldn't hear that.
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
That's how much we would have to reduce the milk.
Ernie was being a wise guy.
Never.
Well, it's a hit of $1.1 million.
Typical.
The difference between the 15.4 and the 14.3.
No.
It's 1.22.
Now multiply that by the value of 1 mil in the first column. 570, 291.
So it's about 1.4 mil.
They just, oh, you're almost like this. That's what you're writing, go, come on.
346.
No, you told me.
The bottom line is, we can make we have to make these decisions right now.
Yeah, but people, it takes,
I need a whiteboard in here, because this is driving me nuts, I can't follow it. Bev, the column total all funds, what column is that? What does that represent to me?
What page?
which one?
I'm on page 31 of 31, right?
That's all the funds listed there.
So, okay, and does it add up anywhere on this page?
What?
What, does it add up to 21,673,000?
Yeah, that's all the funds listed, that's the projection, that's the requirement.
And so the amount to be raised by taxes, that does not include any
Of the
grants in
other
it?
funds, that has nothing to do with the other funds, that 15.4
He's
is
still wrestling with that
only general
calculator.
fund.
I
Only
can't, I'm sorry.
the 15.4 million to be raised by taxes only impacts the general fund, not the other funds. Those are there, one of those are there for informational purposes, so that FiPAC has an idea of what we have in the funds, the major funds.
So the 15 million doesn't include all the grants and other stuff. We
No.
get these grants out of them.
We're just.
So I guess the question is, if, for me, nice and simple, Stephen, we need X amount of dollars based on what we agreed upon spending.
Yeah.
This is what we need, you figure out how we're gonna, it adds up and it gets there, okay? And this is what we need for taxes to get to that.
That's the
That's the
15.4.
15.
So that's 15.4.
Has to be collected to make the general fund budget balance.
Getting it, Art?
No, I'm getting what I'm looking at. I don't know what he was talking about.
Okay, what's the
So
difference?
21 minus 15.4, that's $6 million difference,
Huh?
right?
Does it?
So you're focusing on all funds, so the capital all the way to American League has nothing to do with taxes. Those are funds reserved for specific
I
projects.
understand that, but the taxes is the 15.4 million, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not even putting that in there. What I'm saying is, when it's all said and done, you're showing me a $6.2 million difference there. 21.6 minus 15.4 is 6.
Yeah, but the taxes aren't going into those other funds. That's the total of all the funds. So you want to look at the general fund, the total requirement of 18.5. That's what you need. So the 15.4 is additional.
No, what are you looking at? You're comparing the 21 to the 16?
Yes.
Oh, don't do that. 21
Yes.
They're not
21 is your out though. Remember up top, you have some resources, you have grants, whatever, you're ignoring the income, the revenue. We have 6.2 million in revenue, 6,222, about 10 lines down.
Yeah,
And that is offset by 21.5 million in outgo. So the net of those 6 minus 15, you need additional revenue of 15.
okay, so I understand what you're telling me, Ernie, but so then, so if I take all that, I don't know why they're in that column then. If we're total original general fund budget of 18.6 and we need 15.4, that leaves 3.2 left over, correct?
When, what you
You
just
said
said,
we need total original general fund balance.
you're doing the same thing comparing the 18 to the 15, you're.
I gotta
the
compare
resource.
something. There's gotta be something to compare. What we need to bring in,
Yeah,
what we have available, and what we need to spend.
and I'm saying you're ignoring what we're bringing in by just comparing those two bottom numbers.
Because all the money isn't raised by taxes.
I understand, that gives us the 18.6, right?
Fees, permits,
Kind of what you just told me, right?
fees, permits.
18.5, do it this way. Take the, which column are you in?
The last one.
Yeah, I don't even. look
Okay,
at that.
take the take the,
That's just information, that's information.
wait a minute,
That's total, of everything the town has, so they have an idea of
okay,
all resources.
Let's
You really focus on the
let's
first column, general fund, that's all you need to focus on.
start over. There's a little fuzz in this amount to be raised by tax. There should be zeros in all those columns. That number should be 15,444. It should match what's in the general fund because the general fund is the only place where we're collecting property taxes. So there's a little balance that needs to be spruced up in the rec programs fund and the capital fund.
Oh, the requirements, yes.
Got it?
Yep.
Am I looking, I'm looking at an old version, so
I'm probably looking at the wrong page.
No, can I see the page for the? Okay, it hasn't been cleaned up. Sorry, I was looking at the original. So you're in that column, do this, take the 15,448.
Yeah.
Mentally move it up next to the 6,225.
Yeah.
558. The sum of those is 21,673, 665.
Right,
So what's confusing me? So
nothing, I'm all there with you.
So with what you said, some of our resources that we project will equal some of the, all the others. that we're looking at.
You're kind of that right. The 15 and the 6 equals the 21, we only need 15.
What? No, we only need 15 because we're taking 6 into account. If we didn't,
But in that 6, that doesn't, okay,
yeah, if we didn't get any state grants and if we didn't charge the public for services, we'd have to tax people 21,000,006.
Without grants and without payments.
And it's grants from both the state and federal government.
I don't care if it's general rate. It's just, in this format, it doesn't, I can't grasp it, so that's fine.
Okay, you got what not to.
Oh, yes.
It is a payment.
It's in there.
Where we go? I lost my page. Give me that back. Okay. When I first started, you know what this page looked like? No,
Looks like the New York Crossroads.
no, there was no indication of what money was in any fund except the general fund. They just said, you have to transfer some money to the capital reserve fund, you have to transfer money here, but they never told you what those fund balances were, or what activity was occurring in those funds.
Maybe I can sit with you and you can try and
Maybe.
help.
Oh, if you track it down,
Yeah, yeah, we can sit down. Somewhere. Yeah, no problem.
okay. I'm not even sure what is, how we got into that. Trust me, it works.
So I'll let you know that if you're gonna go to a vote today, and you want to use the general fund, you're talking about at least $693,000 to bring it down to the 2587.
693,882.
Yeah, if you want to be exact,
What is the fund balance
if you want to be exact, I don't know. I'll just play with my spreadsheet.
Yeah, what's the fund balance before we take that out? What's the fund balance?
It's gonna be about 4.3.
So then we could easily take out like the amount that you just said.
Oh, you want to be done tonight? Is that what you're saying?
Is that 4.3 take into the account of all monies that will be returned to the general fund at the end of this year? Fiscal, or
It has an estimate right now of a couple $100,000,
so
but
now that 4.3 could be 4
it could be higher, yeah.
or 5.
Yeah.
Because 4.39 is more like 4.4.
That's not even taking account, like, it has some projection of like property tax. It has a small, 100,000 from the Board of Ed, so I know those are just very conservative numbers right now, so it could go higher.
Yeah, like I said, I think we can get through this year fairly easily doing the standard, but again, let's look at those 4-year projections and.
I know, that was a good point.
I think we'll revisit, because I'm looking at some of the capital stuff. and the fire department, 300,000, 300,000, 300,000 or something. If we can pay,
Yes, if there's something this year that we find, make a priority and go to town meeting.
I think I discussed that a little bit last week, and suggested we look at maybe spread it even it out, but then when I look at the actual totals, it doesn't make sense to move anything because
yeah,
there's no dips.
right.
So for selectmen budget, did anybody have any questions on any specific items? We got a lot of stuff and some of us are familiar with the documents. I think we have a better understanding now, or I hope we do.
Jen, did everybody get the library response?
Yes.
Yeah.
We just got it tonight, so.
It's good. Actually, what you said about future expenditures and capital budget, I'm gonna chance to think about that. I mean, my inclination was to simply take that money out of the general fund and keep a zero tax increase, but I think we have to plan for future years, so I want a chance to think about it, maybe talk to you a little bit about it. And we don't need to make a decision tonight, so that's what I'm thinking about is what's the best plan going forward?
I don't know, you know, there are different ways to approach it. You could do something as simple as let's commit ourselves to a capital investment, each level capital investment for a level, a level amount of deficit that we're willing to absorb every year. That means how much,
Well, that means we have to budget for that.
well, you take it into account to say, we're not gonna take any more than 500,000 out of the general fund for the next 5 years. What we will take 500,000 out of the general fund, we know we're gonna have to, again, this is just hypothetical. Then you can look at, well, now we have 4,000,003. At that level, general fund will drop by 500,000 a year or 600,000 a year, maybe for the next 3 years, and we still be in good shape in terms of the size of the fund balance. Again, I'm just talking, I'm not suggesting, I'm just saying, think in those terms, so think about it a different way if you want to. What's a good way to plan for, or what are some thoughts, you know, throw stuff against the wall and say, okay,
Knowing that we may have some future expenditures, I think we should make an effort to minimize the impact on taxpayers. So we should spread out over a period of time. And earlier, actually, I'm telling you to come up with a plan for doing
once you pay it.
it. So I think that's our challenge here, is to figure out the best way to spread out those future expenditures over the coming years.
And we have tried and looked at that, and there is a plan in place. Now, I'm gonna make 2 comments. Look at history. History says every year, in most of stuff, we give back to the general fund better than $300,000. That's history, okay? And the second thing is, with a general fund, inflation where it sits, inflation where it currently sits, and then asking taxpayers to pay more than what we would need during this time, be careful. Now, in saying that, I've looked at the forecast and I know there's going to be increases in the years coming. Board of Education is going to go up. I've seen the uptick in the tuition for high schools. The lower grades are getting larger than the high school is now, so you're going to see expenditure there. Everything else goes up, cost of living, you know, we're seeing a big thing now. There are going to be tax increases over the next few years. It's a way of life. We've been lucky, but to do it this year, I caution.
The thing is, Steve, I mean, I've been involved in town government for about 20 years now. Every single year, we plan for expenditures for the fire department. we put aside $50,000 a year, like for a camper truck and things like that. And it's being planned for. Now, that's not, I'm thinking this is similar to what we're going through right now, the capital expenditures. We put aside money to pay for improvements at Rec Park. So all I'm saying is that let's try to be planned for so that we don't hit taxpayers with a big increase down the road. And let's be thankful so that if there's any increase, it'll be a small increase now and small in future years.
Thank you.
We haven't identified a lot of issues or things that make people angry or reactive. Is this gonna be a quiet decision-making process?
I think so, actually.
Again, I need to wrestle with this thing, the Board of Ed numbers and see if I can. See if I can come up with a trend. That's the only thing I'm sort of not comfortable with, and I think you probably feel the same way. I just can't understand. We'll get from 1A to 4B, back down to 4C, and then back up to D. And what these numbers really mean. So Ben, how long or how firm do you expect this thing to be by next week, if at all? I'm not trying to put you on the hook.
I'll make it as firm as I can do based on what I know, so. It'll just be an update, and I can try to update each week as it goes, because if there's numerous changes I do need to put in, just because of a few things that have been happening the last couple months, so I'll try to get that in. And I think other than that one project we're waiting for a quote on, I should have everything else as much as possible in, and then just talk to Barb to see if she knows what else is coming up down the pipe, so.
Okay, I'm at the point where I have completely lost control of my paper stack.
Okay, so while you're looking for it, can I ask Bev a question? Or I'm gonna ask her. I find it a little unsettling, and this is not a dig at anybody, just how I feel, that you're talking in mysteries, and as the first selectman, I would like to be appraised of some of the concerns with equipment or materials or plans for even the school area, because it does fall under the town, and currently I sit in this position in the town. So if you could, and if you say to me it's on the QT, it's between you and I do hold a governmental top secret clearance, and I know how to keep my mouth shut, honestly. But I'd love to know what's going on.
Don't tell me that.
Sure.
Okay, honestly,
I'm trying to
and I
find,
can support.
But a lot of stuff just came up in the last.
I get it,
but I have a question on the trying. I don't think I've ever seen this discussed in Board of Ed minutes. Is that a true statement, or fair statement, or am I just missing?
So usually they have a budget subcommittee that they kind of go into and ask questions, and then it's put on the consent agenda to be accepted. And if there's nobody moves to make it be discussed, it stays on the consent agenda and it just passes.
Okay, the real tricky question or comment here is who participates in those?
There's 3 board members and the budget subcommittee. They're the only ones who can be in that discussion.
Who's the budget subcommittee?
So who's in there?
Huh?
The budget subcommittee is, I attend, and superintendent, and it's the 3 board members, which is Jim,
Also just 3 board
board
members.
chair, and
Okay, that's good enough.
another person. Sorry.
What?
And then me.
So they go in, I mean, you put this together, of course, and they go in and if some point somebody will say, let's spend some extra money on it because something blew up. Those 3 budget subcommittee people have put this together and then the rest of the group just gets a handout.
Yeah, they get it, and then they they have questions on it, they'll ask during the meeting, they'll ask for it to be part of the discussion point, but in the last couple of meetings, they haven't asked to move it to a discussion point. And we certainly can always go over it in fiscal policy if you want that brought up, put on the agenda too.
What would you call
What?
it? To put on fiscal policy, what would you call it? The
Well,
school
it would be
expenditure
discuss-
report?
it would be discussion of the Board of Ed budget.
Okay.
It's like, if
In
we want to
general.
discuss the Board of Ed selecting budget, or we want to discuss capital. Yeah. They call it an expenditure report.
Okay. Again, nobody's raising a bunch of issues. We're looking at budget with the capital funding. Sounds like we're sort of feeling comfortable that we can do business as usual. Have a target, maybe the target is 0% tax increase. And we have a standard for achieving that, and nobody suggested anything different. Again, I really need to grind through the Board of Ed, and I want Express to do that. Go ahead, what were you gonna say?
I was saying, so it sounds to me like there's two plans being presented, two potential directions we can go. The first one is a tapering approach, straight out the gate. And that is, we taper through the next couple of years to start adjusting to what's going to eventually be a tax increase. The other plan is to have flat tax for this coming year, keep the tax flat for this coming year, followed by the next year of a tapering approach, and putting off the tapering approach for the following year. Is that an accurate assessment?
I'm not sure I heard anybody say anything about increasing taxes this year, this budget year. I might have said it, but I didn't mean to.
Oh, okay, so I apologize.
Art, from what I heard, I think you have it 100% right,
Okay, thank you.
because I heard the same thing.
No, you didn't.
Okay, let me make a comment. I think we have a very, very healthy, very large fund balance, which means that we can hit that to keep a 0 tax increase this year. And even if we do take money from that, we're still gonna have a very healthy fund balance that we can use in following years to minimize the impact of some of the expenditures that we've been talking about. And I guess that's where I'm kind of leaning to do, in a general sense, because we don't have the details yet. And I think that fits in with what you said, no tapering this year, but in the future years, maybe we increase a little bit, maybe we don't have to, we'll see what happens. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does make sense.
Okay.
Okay, I guess what I'm looking at, what's today?
23rd, Wednesday. And by the way, I won't be here on the 13th,
What?
April 13th. We have a meeting scheduled for the 13th.
Don't be here the 6th.
Okay,
Wait, you're out with them?
6th and 13th.
Dick, are you gonna be away from the Zoom capability?
Oh, I'm gonna be in the hospital, I have a hospital
I thought that was kind of, oh, so close.
on the 13th, so
It's on the 13th of
April.
I'm out of state.
Because having heart surgery is a little better than coming to the FiPAC.
It is actually, I'm looking forward to it.
no,
I am looking forward to it.
trying to look at the calendar to see if it might make sense to unschedule next week to give them time to firm up. I guess it's not really bad.
Yes, you
Firms up.
I will.
It's, she doesn't make the decision, so let's not never shoot the messenger. But then that runs into additional problems, I guess.
Well, like I said, I can just give you an update, and if there's still questions, I can put notes and just say, these are what's still pending, just so you have an idea, so at least you'll get an update.
Okay. Sounds like we should go for next week.
And would our plan be to respond to the library proposal or have
I-
people here? from the library.
I forget who that concerns, but that will give you a week to review what you have. And
Yeah.
if you have no issues, there's no response to me.
Yeah, that was me that had the concerns. It's the first time I've seen a report like that from the library. I'd like to see them oncoming so that we understand. We get nice reports from the board of ed. So being part of us and asking us for money is something I want to see. I mean, the 15,000 in the scheme of things here in the budget isn't very much.
Okay, anything else?
Well, the question I have is, do you want any particular departments or groups, fire department, library, any departments to show up next week for questioning?
I would say
I see
no.
Sue and Steve are online, so I don't know if you want them to be prepared to be on next week.
Well, let's do this. Anybody who goes through and has an issue, if they need a presentation, that. Who do we talk?
Tell me, I'll line them up. Well, if you have any specific questions,
Well, if they
again,
have a question and they just want to write a response to them.
Right.
Yeah,
It
just
should just
start
be straightforward.
Yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
so send questions out to Mark and then he can, and if you definitely want him on, or you just have a question. Same thing with the Board of Ed, 'cause, send them to Mark or send them over to Barb, 'cause there.
So I think we're close. I mean, again, I just, everybody should send this money. What's normal for the board of ed, and I'm just not comfortable. Not totally uncomfortable, I'm just not comfortable. And again, we're running out of time to use deductions under the minimum budget requirement, right? So
Yes, they're was 5-year averaging and each year the population seems to be increasing, so I'm thinking maybe the next 2 years. Is that we have,
yeah, so if you're gonna take a closer look, this is the time to do it. And if that's it, we'll move to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
It's unanimous. Thank you.
18. Good night, Kelly.
next week,
Good
next
seeing
week.
you.
Good night,
Bye,
Kelly.
Todd. Nice to meet you,
Good
Todd.
Good night, job, boys.
Not even here, or just a station.
I think you just put it there.
Yeah.